One of the best things that you can do on a motorcycle is go on these extended trips, multi-day trips, ideally with a bunch of friends, and just keep riding day after day. One of the downsides of that is, of course, when you get tired or your body starts to ache, it becomes less and less fun. So to keep the whole trip fun, these would be my top 5 tips to keep you fit and alert on the motorcycle after riding about 200,000 kilometers in the past 12 years. So let's get started. What's up, my biker friend, and welcome back to another video. This is just gonna be another video of me sharing a few of the things that I've learned on the way, and maybe that will help you and your riding. So we're gonna look at 5 of the top tips that still help me to stay fit and alert when I go on these multi-day tours on the motorcycle. So let's start with number 1, and that's keeping stretches and mobilization exercise as part of your journey. It sounds a little silly when you kind of say it like this, but I do mean it. So make sure that when you get off the bike, and get off the bike regularly, every 1 or 2 hours, just get off the bike for a little bit and just kind of stretch out your body a little bit. If you're sitting on the motorcycle, and especially if you're not riding these long distances for very often in the year, and if you kind of observe yourself, sometimes we get a little bit cramped up when we sit on the motorcycle, especially as we start to fatigue a little bit, get tired, and we have a harder time to concentrate. It's when the body is going in that cramped up position. Now, there's things that you can do on the bike, of course, trying to remind yourself to stay loose, especially in the shoulder. When your shoulder and your neck's hurting at the end of the day, that's a very clear sign that you've been too tight on the bike and that you need to sort of spend a bit more time, a bit more attention on making sure you stay loose on the bike. But also when you get off the bike, the entire body, and just kind of stretch it out a little bit and use those, even if it's just 10 minutes off the motorcycle, to just kind of stretch and stay loose. Even if you don't need it at the very beginning, it will pay off later in the day, and it will pay off later, a few days later, when you do like a 10-day trip or something, when you start doing that very early on. Another thing is that you can do things on the motorcycle. You don't have to be sitting in your seat the entire time. If you travel with me, you'll see me getting sort of out of my seat quite a bit, typically in sort of slower sections of the trip. So usually if we're going through smaller towns, you'll see me get out of my seat. It's pretty easy to do on an adventure bike. It's a bit harder to do if you're riding a cruiser, with the forward controls. It's kind of hard to get on the foot pegs. But if you have an adventure bike or a touring bike, with those mid controls, where the foot pegs are, you can easily stand up and just ride a little bit standing up and just kind of, swerve around, move a little bit and stay loose. You'll see me doing this quite a bit. Now, this may be a little weird if you've never really been riding in a standing position. Just do it when you're going slow. It's actually not that hard to do, but it really helps. Especially if it's not just the neck that's bothering you, but you have back pains, or you have you're prone to having back pain. And a lot of people are prone to having back pain. And one of the worst things that you can do is keep sitting in the static position on the motorcycle, especially as you sort of tense up throughout the day. So stay loose, keep your back loose, stand up a little bit, kind of shift your weight from foot peg to foot peg, and you'll see it makes a major difference how long you can stay fit and alert on the motorcycle. Now, the second point is hydration, staying hydrated enough on the tour. Now, that seems a little silly if you don't really know. It's like, what does it have to do with how much I drink with alertness and concentration? Well, it has everything to do with it. Because if your body doesn't have enough water, if you're going into slight hydration, the body basically goes into energy saving mode. So it tries to conserve energy because there isn't enough water in the system, so it's trying to preserve what it has, and it's ramping down sort of important systems and functions that your body has, and that includes concentration. So if you've ever been in a position where you didn't have enough to drink, you can tell that your concentration levels are not the same. It's going down, your concentration isn't the same. I actually experienced that the first time, I think it was in 2018, so it's quite a few years ago, because I didn't really know what that was. I didn't know how important drinking is, drinking water on your trip. And it was in 2018, it was August in the West Alps in France. I remember that pretty clearly. It was a pretty warm summer. So the mountains are pretty cool when you're at the peak of the mountains. But, as you go through the valleys, we had temperatures easily 33, 34 degrees. So it's pretty warm for European sort of mountain climate. And we were drinking, we're bringing water. It's not we weren't drinking anything, but we weren't drinking enough. So we weren't drinking enough, probably weren't taking enough breaks as well. So towards the end of a trip, so those were pretty long riding days at the time. It was just the two of us. So we had an average of 400 kilometers in the Alps, which is on the very upper end of what most people ride through mountain roads. And that had never really been a problem up to the point where we were riding in such warm weather. So it was towards the end of that one day, and we were going up the Col de la Bonnette. That's one of the major passes that you have to see if you're in the West Alps. If you've ever been, you know the Col de la Bonnette. It actually gets you to one of the highest paved roads in the Alps entirely. So it's definitely something you want to see. So we were on our uphill way, and I would start to see that, my concentration was a bit off, and you can tell when you start doing little mistakes, little concentration mistakes. So the line wasn't perfect. That happens like once and happens twice. And these like little mistakes basically announce the big problem, the big mistake that's about to come. So if you see yourself making these mistakes, it's definitely time to turn to the side and stop and have something to drink. But I didn't do that. I kept going. I actually had my camera rolling at the time. I don't know if I find the footage for it, but I know there was one turn and I missed the turn. It was the very first time that I didn't make a turn on an alpine pass, and it ended up in the gravel. And I was luckily towards the mountainside and not towards the sort of downhill side of the pass. So it wasn't really dangerous in that particular moment. It could have been the other side as well. So then it is a dangerous situation. The moment we made it to the top, my friend had the same issue. He was pretty dehydrated, and on the way down, I kind of lost him in my mirror, and all of a sudden he was gone. I had to turn around, find him again, and it turned out he crashed his bike as well. And same thing, he ended up in the gravel, tipped the bike over, nothing really happened, didn't hurt himself. Bike had a few scratches, but that day was definitely something to remember for us. It's like, okay, that's something that was the first for the both of us. And that kept me reminding that we really have to ensure we take enough breaks and definitely drink enough. So that was my experience with dehydration. If you know the channel for a little bit, I've started riding in sort of off-road environments with my large adventure bike. And the good thing there is like, not that you learn all these great skills, but also typically you use a hydration pack. So a lot of these off-road rides have a hydration pack, and it's, you have a little bit of water with you, and you keep drinking because it's sometimes hard to stop, or, if you're kind of a race environment, you don't really stop and pull out a bottle and drink. But this hydration pack's been actually really good, and I started using it for on-road trips as well. Now, you don't see a lot of people riding on-road that have a hydration pack, and you don't have to have it like that, but it makes it really easy to just keep drinking a little bit. So you drink in small amounts, because there's no point in riding for 3 or 4 hours and then chucking down a gallon of water and think that you have your sort of hydration taken care of. That's not how it works. So smaller amounts in more frequent times definitely make a huge difference. So anyway, make sure, guys, to stay hydrated. It's really important. It's one of the most important things to stay alert and fit on a motorcycle. Number 3 is choosing healthy foods, and there are 2 things to it. First is making sure that you have access to food and snacks, and then making sure that they're somewhat healthy. So let's start with the first one, is just making sure that you have something to eat with you at all times. Depending on where you travel to, you may be traveling to areas that, that doesn't have sort of dense infrastructure of having restaurants or shops there where you can easily buy food. If you're going into some of the areas that are a bit remote and there isn't anything there, if you go in the shoulder seasons, which I have done, also in the middle of Europe, there are a lot of places that are just closed. It's really difficult to even get a coffee or any kind of snack. So it's good to bring a little bit, and don't just pack Snickers. I mean, pack a Snickers too, but pack something that's a bit healthy as well. But if you have a little bit of snacks with you, you sort of make sure you don't sort of run out of food and out of energy. There is a point where the hydration, of course, is the most important things, but if you haven't really had anything to eat and you also see that your concentration goes down, yes, you can, it helps with the Snickers, and I do that sometimes as well when I see, okay, I've reached the bottom where I need to sort of boost with sugar, you can certainly do it. It isn't the first thing you should be doing, but if you have to, then that's what you have the Snickers for. But have other snacks, so that, you know, if something happens, you get lost, or, you know, you have a flat tire and you don't have access to food, bring a little bit on the tour. Now, on a normal day, you typically find something to eat, and depends if you need a lunch, a full lunch, or no lunch at all. I've done the full range, from not really eating anything during lunch to having a somewhat of a full lunch. Depends on the trip, depends on the people I go with. But if you do break for lunch, don't get the sort of greasiest, fattiest, biggest burger and stuff yourself, because as we all know, if we eat too much and, you know, of the wrong sort of fast food, that's gonna sit with us for quite some time. So, you know, if you eat heavy foods like this, you get back on the bike, especially if there's high temperatures out there, your body is gonna have a hard time sort of processing the food and processing what's happening on the road. So eat something light, eat something healthy, and then sort of save the sort of big steak for the night, you know, with the beer or something. But, you know, try to eat a lighter meal, because it will help to sort of maintain concentration and awareness and fitness throughout the day. So tip number 4 is to incorporate maybe a rest day or a day where you don't ride as much. So if you do longer trips, 10 to 14 days or even more than that, that's a lot of riding back to back. So if you somewhere in the middle take a day where you just do a half day of riding, or just one day where you don't ride at all, you will definitely see the benefits towards the end of the trip. It gives you time to sort of recharge your energy again and be that much more alert towards the end of the trip. Now, what I do on my guided tours that are longer than 10 days, I usually incorporate a rest day somewhere in the middle of it, and depending on where we are, so on the Balkans tour, if we're in Dubrovnik, this is a great old town to see, so I incorporated that day as the rest day. So we have one day where we can leave the bikes parked and just walk around in the old town and check out the old town and make it just part of the trip. Another trip in the Alps, I try to pick a place on the shorter Alps tour in the West Alps. We have a place where we arrive a bit earlier, so we can use the spa and the pools and just kind of ramp it down and have one day where we don't ride as much. Something to consider for your own tours, a rest day or a shorter day, just to recharge your energy smack in the middle of the trip. So last but not least, on number 5 is sleep and recovery. Now that sounds really obvious as well, but there are things to consider. So if you are coming from further away, for example, you know, crossing the Atlantic, or coming from further away where you have multiple hours time difference in the time zone, and you are maybe prone to the effects of jet lag, consider that before you go on tour. So, you know, if you have a 6 to 8 hour time difference and, you know, you arrive on one day and you jump on the bike the next day and you travel for another 10 days, there's a good chance that it's going to affect your awareness and your concentration on the bike. Maybe give yourself a couple of days just to kind of get used to the new time zone before you go on a longer trip. The other thing, of course, is sleep as you are riding and during the tour. I think that just goes without saying. Make sure you have enough sleep. And, you know, sometimes, you know, if you have a long night, that's fine. But if you have consecutive sort of nights where you're not getting enough sleep, you will see sort of your sort of concentration and your awareness deteriorate with every day that goes on. Now, I had that experience myself, and I knew that was going to be one day where I'll be running with very little sleep. And that was through my Finland and Norway trip when I was going to the North Cape. Now, the North Cape, I was trying to get the most northern point of an accommodation to get very, very close to the North Cape. One of the key things to do there is to get there at night. So after 1 or 2 o'clock, when the tourists are all gone, you'll have the place to almost to yourself. So that was the idea, to go up there in the middle of the night. The idea was to go up there at 4 in the morning, you know, to get some sleep before that. And I was too excited. I couldn't sleep anymore. So I got into bed at 12 and I got up at 1:30, had an hour and a half of sleep. Got up to the North Cape, stuck around for a few hours and just kind of sort of absorbed the energy up there. It was really, really cool. But I knew I had 550 kilometers to go to Tromsø, which is south of the North Cape, obviously. That's a very, very long trip, especially with long straights in it. And I was really, really struggling. And I haven't had that in a very long time, to be riding a bike and being that tired. So that was not a very pleasant day. I was happy to arrive, but you know, we've all been there. So it's something I knew I would have one day like this, and I was fine with it. But you know, if you can avoid it, then absolutely do. Alrighty guys, there you have it. These are my top 5 tips on how to stay fit and alert on the motorcycle. If you have something to add, please put them in the comment section. If you've got questions, put them in the comment section. And of course, there's more to it than just staying alert on the motorcycle. There's all this time leading up to your big trip. And if you do want to know how to prepare the best for a multi-day long haul motorcycle trip, then I can recommend this video.